The film opens with Edward and Connie, a happy and successful family living in the suburbs of New York City, and their 8-year-old son Charlie. Charlie could have had it all, but one rainy day, Connie decided to go to work in the city against her husband's wishes in order to prepare for a major auction in Soho, which led her to WI New York. Since it wasn't practical to call a taxi there, she ended up there. Later, she runs into a young man carrying a large stack of books and they collide, feeling embarrassed. Connie tries to pick up the books that are scattered all over the floor. When the man discovers that the woman has a fractured knee, he invites her to come to his house so he can treat the wound. It turns out that he lives in the same house. The woman then asks the man to help her phone for a taxi. The boy introduces himself and Connie uses the apartment owner's phone to call her son, giving the impression that she is a family woman, even though this makes her feel very uncomfortable. Connie discovers that the boy is 27 years old and makes his living by reselling rare books. And just before the woman leaves, Paul gives the book to her as a memento and even recommends that she read a section on page 15. After reading these book passages that touch Connie, she leaves Paul's apartment. But, on the way home, her kid notices that his mother has a cut on her knee, so he playfully snaps funny photos of her in response to her awkward expressions of appreciation. When Connie informs her husband that she was saved by a dashing young man named Edward, he playfully offers to send her rescuer a bottle of wine as a thank you. When Connie returns to Central State the next morning, she finds that a business card with Paul's phone number has fallen out. Nevertheless, she decides to give him a call for a short while before hanging up. Paul invites Connie over for coffee immediately, which she accepts. Paul makes her coffee as promised and shows her a book that is written in Braille. He also holds her hand as he reads the book. Connie decides to leave. Connie finds herself drawn to the man as well. She shows up at Edward's workplace, greets his co-workers and their friend Bill, and presents her husband a jumper. Additionally, she informs him that she will work at the auction with their buddy Bob that evening. Edward notices that his wife is thinking about something, but he ignores it. The next day, when Connie comes to Paul's house, he invites her to dance practically right away. When Connie realizes she might make a mistake, she tries to leave, but as she turns to get her coat again, the man literally knocks her down and drags her to his bedroom. On the train ride home, the woman recalls what happened to her and Paul, and at that moment, the music stops and Paul walks away. She becomes concerned, and Edward notices that Connie hasn't talked to him about any auctions. Connie and Paul stay in regular contact over time. One day, he invites her to lunch at a cafe. Her husband's subordinate notices this. Later that evening, Edward joins his wife in the bathroom, but she declines, saying she has to go to the salon for a beauty massage, still holding out hope that his suspicions are unfounded. When Connie arrives to Paul's house, she meets some friends who invite her to a nearby coffee shop. Connie contacts her lover to let him know she would be late. Edward calls a member of the salon staff, and his concerns are realized later. But Bill's last warning to take better care of his wife prompts him to hire a private investigator to keep an eye on her. The investigator flies to Chicago for a day, taking pictures of Connie and her lover. The woman is so preoccupied with her affair that she forgets to pick up her son from school and worries about it all night. When the investigator returns, he gives Edward all the information about his wife's meetings with Paul and gives him the address where the photos were taken. When Connie decides she can no longer take it, she approaches Paul to end their relationship on the street. Edward comes to Paul's apartment and meets Paul. He lets Edward in, pours him a drink, and calmly answers all of his questions. These responses cause him to become more and more emotionally wounded by the bedside. Eventually, the man is knocked off balance when Edward discovers a snow globe he gave to his wife, who then gave it to her lover. He loses control of himself and uses the snow globe to beat Paul twice in the head. He then hears the crunch of a skull and falls to the floor. Edward wanted to call the police when he realized what he had done, but he decided to hide the evidence instead. He wrapped Paul's body in a carpet and carried it out of the apartment. When he heard his wife's voice on the answering machine, she sobbed and told her lover that they could no longer fool their family and that their relationship was over. After taking Paul's body to the dump and burying it in a mound of trash, Edward takes the car to be washed. Ever since, the man has seen that his wife is starting to feel romantically interested in him again, but Edward has nightmares. When the police arrived at the house one day, just Connie and her kid were there. They announced that Paul's wife had reported him missing and that they had discovered a piece of paper containing Connie's phone number. The woman responded that she hardly knew Paul at all. The family's life returns to normal after the police leave, but a week later, they return to report that Paul has died. The detectives ask the woman if she has ever been to Soho, where Paul lived, and remind her of a traffic ticket she received there the day she nearly forgot to pick up her son from school. When asked how she and Paul met, she says it was at an unexpected concert. Her husband confirms this, stating that he was there with his wife when Edward noticed his wife being pressed by the police. Connie discovers that her husband was aware of her affair with Paul when she picks up Edward's coat from the dry cleaners the following day and discovers pictures taken by the detective in his pocket. Later that evening, while attending a friend's party, she discovers that the snow globe she gave Paul has been put back in its original place. The couple begins to explain their relationship after she notices from the look in Edward's eyes that he has done away with her lover. He claims that initially, he wanted to get rid of her. For the next few days, the couple live together amicably, but they are always waiting for the police to arrive at their home. Connie discovers a hidden compartment in the snow globe that Edward had placed a family photo with a love note in a few years ago. That same evening, she burns the pictures the detective took and imagines that the day she met Paul, she got into that free taxi and headed home. Her husband approaches her and tells her that he wants to report everything to the police because they are at an end. The school auction that Connie has been planning for a long time is successful, and it culminates in a party where she and her husband dance as though it's their last. When they stop on the way home, Connie suggests that the entire family change their names and move to Mexico to start a new life there. Edward does not object and gives his wife a hug. After all, everything must come to an end for them at the police station where this movie ends.